I can't dance, so I just do like workout moves. Everyone's like, that's different, so it works out. You guys hear me okay? All right, awesome. Yeah, so I'm super excited to be back here. I haven't actually been at Draper University probably in maybe 1 to 2 years now. Probably more like 2 years. However, I feel like I was here yesterday before everything was kind of set up this way. So it's definitely, it's moved. Now we have these lights here, the cameras. It's really nice to be back. So kind of today I want to do 2 different things. So first I'm going to share my story. Then I'm going to kind of talk about my book. And all of you have the book, so I'm not going to read it for you. I'm on basically like a reading series right now where I've been going to different cities and doing different launch events where I basically speak about it. But I feel like after 20 minutes, like I have ADD. I'm like, all right, boring. So I want to make sure that you really get the content. And I was in your shoes in 2012, 2013. I didn't really know what I was doing. A lot of you may have already started businesses. You may be trying to figure out what's next. You may already have a business that you're trying to grow. And for myself, at least, I captured a lot of advice while I was out here, really all because of Draper University. So I'll kind of share how I found out about DU in 2013, how DU helped me, how I got to where I am now, and kind of my next steps going forward. So I'll take a step back. When I was 13, 14, I thought I was be a professional snowboarder. That was pretty much my trajectory. So my last year of middle school, my parents told me there's a school you can go to in New Hampshire where you can snowboard, and they basically have a place in their varsity team. I'm like, wait, there's varsity snowboarding? That's a thing? I'd never heard of that. However, they had a tutor that essentially traveled with me across the US as with a snowboard contest. After 3 to 4 years of doing that, I broke a bone every single year. And while my other friends were doing all these like double back flips and double front flips, I hit a peak in my game where I could do good tricks for a 13, 14-year-old, but the second I hit 15, 16, 17, I couldn't take it to the next level. So my coach sat me down and he said, you could be the guy who is a semi-professional snowboarder. Maybe by age 27 you finish your career. At that point you don't have a college degree. Maybe you didn't finish high school. However, you have a great community. Or you can be the guy who makes the snowboards. You can make the company that pushes the sport forward. So I decided kind of from that moment, I wanted to make products, and I started getting into engineering. So I went to Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, and one of the reasons I went there, well, I was looking for actually the best school that had nanotechnology, product design, and partying. That was a really weird combination. And the reason I say partying is because I went to boarding school, so I didn't really have the high school experience. We had about 250 students. And I've had a lot of friends who've gone from middle school to starting a company, and they've kind of missed this point of adolescence. I think it's really important to grow as an individual, and you need to go through each stage of your life. So at Lehigh University, they had these amazing machine shops, and the first day of class I went in, I wanted to use the laser cutter, I wanted to use the 3D printers, I wanted to use the CNC machine. They said, sorry, you can't do that. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, when you're a junior, you can use these machines. You have to go through all these hours of training. I'm like, that makes sense. They don't want me to cut my fingers or, like, let's say, even get my foot stuck in something. So I asked them, well, okay, as a freshman, how can I get access? And they said, well, you can start a club. However, freshmen, they're not allowed to start clubs. So I said, all right, that's not going to stop me. So I went ahead, and we essentially passed a new rule for clubs that freshmen could start clubs, and we started the technical entrepreneurship class. And the idea was we had these different classes part of our club where we teach other individuals, how to make physical products. So take it really from 0 to 1. Rather than just having an idea, how do we use a Raspberry Pi or an Intel Edison and start making products? So at Lehigh University, I was in a fraternity, and one of my best friend's fathers was a big entrepreneur and venture capitalist in the East Coast. He'd been working with this guy, Ron Conway, from SV Angels and MC Hammer, which probably many of you have heard of. And through him, I was at dinner, and he said, I got this email from Ron Conway about this new program called Draper University. And at the time, I looked it up. The website was minimal. Now the website's fantastic. You guys have a TV channel. It's really gone leaps and bounds beyond the initial landing page. However, I said, you know what? I'm going to come out here. I'm going to see how I can get that connection within Silicon Valley. If it works for me, great. If it doesn't, I can always go back to my daily life. this was my junior year of Lehigh, so I was planning only to come out here for really a month and a half. I wasn't planning to stay out here for 5 years. And that was kind of a big surprise. So many of you, I'm not sure if you still do this in the program, but halfway through we had BizWorld. And we basically had a contest where we had to create a wristband. And the night before, I was reading a blog post about this product called the Buddy Cup. And the Buddy Cup were these beer glasses that when you click them together, you'd exchange Facebook information. And I thought this was super cool because this is still a problem, but all my friends, when I was socializing with them, they'd always be looking at their phone. So either they're messaging someone else, I wouldn't get their full attention, and I always kind of had this in my mind. How do I take some technology and make sure that data physically still gets up there? So we can have a great conversation, however, all that context is still recorded in the digital world. So I came up with the concept for Buddyband, and the idea was that you could naturally exchange information. So we wanted to delete the business card. We do that by, you shake a hand, you can exchange LinkedIn. On your application, if you bump fists, you can exchange Instagram. Let's say you're at a music festival, you do a high five, you exchange Spotify accounts. And it was really more, I would say, of a gimmicky idea at first. However, we were really excited about the data behind it. So after the program was completed, basically every other student got an offer to stay at Draper University. And myself and my two friends, Sambhav and Alan, who became my co-founders, there was silence. And we're like, what's going on? And before we were about to leave, I think Sambhav was actually going to fly back in about an hour afterwards. Tim came to us and said, you know what? I want to give you some funding and the ability to basically be here at Draper University. So I called my parents up. I said, I'm not going back to college. I said, I'm basically going to do this. I can't say what if. And my parents were completely against it. So I negotiated, and I made a contract with my dad, which actually I've pretty much done for 3 months, or every 3 months for the last 7 years of my life, where I say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and if I do so, then I can continue going on. So every 3 months, I'd say, okay, we're going to create a prototype, we're going to make sure it's functional, we're going to get our first customer, we're going to get a patent, we're going to get an office, we're going to make sure we have a head of sales. And with my father, I'd basically create these milestones, and we'd go forward. So fast forward 3 years, we basically start Looped as this wristband concept. We then turned it into technology for events, and we launched at South by Southwest. So with that, I kind of want to take you through my journey. I'm going to start in the middle of it. I'm then going to go back to the beginning, and then we'll finish it off, and then we'll go into my book. And then afterwards, if anyone has any questions, I'm only going to share 5 rules today. There's 50. We could be here all day. But these are really 5 impactful rules that I wish I knew when I was 18, 19-year-olds out here, and that I still use every single day. So 2015, we basically launched Looped at South by Southwest. So you might see the gap of time. We first started the Looped here at Draper University in August 2013. So for about a 1.5 year period, we were really focused on making technology. We believed that if we made this unique technology, we could get patents for it, we could license out the IP to other companies. So our first few hires were firmware developers, where Bluetooth at the time was newer on iOS devices. And with Bluetooth, you have a master and a slave mode, where essentially it's one-way communication. And we invented a way for dual communication, so essentially bidirectionally between 2 devices. And we thought this was really cool because we could use this as an offline internet network. We were saying that we could basically exchange information if it was files, text, let's say in places like India or Africa, they don't have internet. And they could use these wristbands or lanyards to connect with each other. So we created this technology. We manufactured our first product. We then submitted it to South by Southwest. They have a program run by Techstars. And we were chosen as their smart data startup for 2015. So we decided this is a great place to launch. So we head out there. For about 3 months, we planned our go-to-market. We wanted to make sure that we had a really big launch. Rather than doing an email that blasted out to a big list or cold calling people, we wanted to make sure that they could really form a connection with us and then in person have an experience where they see how the product works. So we asked South by Southwest if we could partner with them to do a big scavenger hunt. And once again, they said, no, you can't do that. So we went behind their back, and they said, if you kind of don't tell us, basically, and ask for forgiveness afterwards, that's fine. So we reached out to all the partners at South by South Interactive, which is their technology part of the conference. And we told all of them we want to basically drive traffic to your company, but at the same exact time, we want the ability to give your product out to our winners. So we had these different maps we placed in 20 different locations that were secret throughout the Austin Convention Center. And as people came up to our booth, what we did was we actually switched away at first from the wristband to a necklace. And we'd give them a necklace, they'd log in with the mobile application and say, check, you just went to stop 1. It would then give them a clue of how to get to stop 2. And when they got there, using this Bluetooth necklace, when they stood on top of the mat, automatically check them in. And we said the first 30 people to finish this challenge would get prizes from Misfit, ShipStation, a lot of the tech companies that were first launching their products out there. And from there, we closed a few of our big clients. And that was huge for us, because I've done a lot of mini launches within Looped where we did all the right stuff, we used all the right software, we created email automation, let's say with outreach for our sales team. We'd use this connect and sell technology to basically get 24 hours of calling within a few minutes. And at the end of the day, it's all about the value of that in-person interaction. And it goes back to taking that physical and putting it digitally online. So we ended up partnering Box, our very first client. This was probably not the smartest move. As a company, you want to start small, be focused, and then scale up. So Box comes to us and they say, you know what, we have our annual user conference. It's all developers. They're going to have the ability to hack your system, so it's got to be very secure. 6 months before that, Box was actually hacked. So they were really concerned with this new kind of Bluetooth technology as a new vulnerability that could be brought in. However, even though it was 2,500 people and they had Tim Ferriss and Mark Benioff as their keynote speakers, we said, okay, let's do this event. If it goes really well, from there we'll get other customers. So this is actually a picture from, well, yeah, not this event, a different one, Zero. We just made similar for Box, where on this image, every single person was wearing a necklace. And at first, the necklace was a smart business card. So it had a button on it, and when you press the button within 3 inches of someone else's, it would exchange information. A light would turn green. On your phone, it would then say, hey, you met Brian, you met him in this location, here are interests you have in common, here's his social media feed. You can start chatting with one another. And the idea is that you could connect at the event, and afterwards, when you have downtime, you can then look through all that contextual information and figure out, here are the right people I want to talk to, and here's what I want to share with them. So on this graph for the organizer, so the little red dots, we actually created an engagement score called the VIA score for each individual. And the VIA score added up by if you had more connections, if you went to more sessions, if you stayed longer visiting different companies, it would become more red. So they could see where their engagement is. So you can see on this, for example, the attendees that are less engaged are on the right-hand side, which is the exhibit floor, where those who were most influential and engaged, well, if they're chatting, walking over to the main stage theater, and then there's some who already got to the stage theater who were influential. We also have these dots on the right-hand side, which ties back to our initial vision, where as people messaged on our mobile app, we would know physically where that location was sent from and to. So we started creating these lines showing where people are interacting. So we could say, okay, were people texting each other or messaging in the same room? Were they telling their friends from the theater to the exhibit hall, hey, the speaker session's about to start, come on over? So this was really our first product. And from there, we were able to sign other really big customers like Intel, Adobe, Cisco. And for us, it was one of those things where our target at first wasn't enterprise clients. Our target was actually more SMB and mid-market and like smaller events. However, where we found our product market fit was these large enterprises. And what we realized was these large enterprises had hundreds of events. So essentially, if it went well with a few of their events, they could then help us scale out. It also meant that once you did it for these big enterprises, a lot of times they wanted to test you for the flagship event. So opposite the startup world, where you basically start small and scale up, a lot of these enterprise companies said, okay, if you can do the biggest event, like Salesforce, for example, they said, okay, if you can do Dreamforce, we'll give you all of our other events. Where I was saying, well, I'll do your 100-person event, then 500, then 1,000, then we'll do your 100,000. So it really stressed us. However, it got us to the right position. Going back to the beginning, you probably recognize where this is upstairs. So these are my 2 co-founders and our first employee. Sambhav is to the left of me, and Alan's to the right of me. Sambhav is from India, and he was only in the US for a few months before coming to Draper University. For Alan, he's from Taiwan. And for myself, when I was looking to start a company. Actually, when I came out here, I didn't even know I was going to start a company. However, I knew there's 3 things I was looking for. First thing was I was looking for a really interesting concept, which was a combination of physical product and also software. And we came with the wristband naturally. That idea kind of fit into that category. I was looking for other founders that wanted to join me, that it wasn't forceful. So actually, I came up with this idea, and then Sambhav and Alan were looking for an idea to pitch. And they came to me and said, hey, your idea is really cool. Sambhav says, I'm a hardware developer, I can build it. Alan said, I'm a software developer, and I was a mechanical engineer / material scientist designer. So I said, okay, I can basically do all the manufacturing stuff. And I can also do all the UI and UX design for all the software. And then the third thing was I was looking for an investor that really believed in what we were doing, and that was Tim. So when all those 3 things came together without even trying to force anything, I said, I can't say what if, we have to do this. So fast forward a few months, we end up launching. This was our article on TechCrunch, basically announcing our raise with Tim and Mark. So Mark Benioff became one of our main investors, and I actually met Mark by sneaking into a party at his house. So Tim had introduced us, and I've been emailing Mark back and forth. However, I knew in order basically to close a deal and to make sure they were the right investors for us, I had to meet them in person. And I've been trying months to basically meet Mark. And one of my other investors said, I have this +1 for this gala at Mark's house. He's probably not going to be there. Been a few times. He's never there. What do you know? I show up. There's this big guy basically introducing his company that he's invested in for this gala. And I said, okay, this is my opportunity. So end of the party, I asked Mark if he had like 10 minutes. I ended up chatting with him. And a few weeks before, they had Dreamforce, where he was talking about the future of Salesforce's offline data. They want to basically know all the actions of salespeople that can drive more revenue. So I saw that our technology, at least for all of their events, could be that missing gap, or that missing fit for their gap that would basically go in. So I pitched that. He liked it. We then basically called up TechCrunch, and we said, okay, you have an embargo for our story. We'd like to launch with you. We actually did an interview with Tim and Anthony Ha, who's a reporter for TechCrunch, and then we launched. Also, from this article, so this is really a good learning story. TechCrunch, at least when I was out here, I was like, TechCrunch is really cool. It's validation. Not necessarily, you know, for all of like my other nerdy tech friends, like myself, they're like, that's super cool, you're in TechCrunch. For this, it did get us a lot of attention from the investor community and from the startup community. However, a lot of the startups couldn't afford our product. For the enterprise, it wasn't as much validation. So this was a good starting point. And from there, we started creating more PR, which was more industry specific, that our clients would be reading. And they'd say, hey, we saw your product, and then reach out to us and want to learn more. Fast forward to the end, October 2015. Our team, we, at that point, had about like 15 enterprise clients. Our team, we scaled to about like 20 employees. We had an office here in San Francisco and in Taiwan. At first, we were scaling our company here, and we were kind of looking at our burn rate. And it was really hard to find engineers here in Silicon Valley. The reason is Google, Facebook, they pay astronomical wages to basically take these people off the market. If not, you basically have venture capital who's going to startups. And it's just really hard to compete or keep someone's focus for more than 6 months. So we'd hired all these amazing software developers. We were paying maybe 4 to 5x than what we would in like the Midwest, or there's a lot of companies now in Salt Lake City. And every 4 to 6 months, when someone was like pretty much ramped up in our technology, they would leave. So my co-founder, Alan, who had moved to Taiwan when he was 14, he said, hey, let me try opening an office there. There's actually a lot of data scientists from the UK, and when it comes to basically manufacturing robots, Taiwan and China, for Taiwan Semiconductor and Samsung are the 2 innovators outside of Intel. So we said, okay, let's do this. So we basically then opened our main engineering team software-wise in Taiwan, and we did this remote style for a few years. From there, we ended up winning some awards. So we won Event Technology Startup of the Year. We won Bluetooth Technology of the Year. And once again, it's not validation. So at first, I thought raising money essentially was validation. I thought winning all these awards was validation. It's good because you basically have people that believe in you. You know, the awards say, hey, you're basically pushing the market forward. Investment shows, hey, you basically need investment to move your company fast. However, end of the day, it's really about making sure you're solving a problem in a simple way and you're driving revenue for your company. and reaching profitability. So for us, about halfway through, we said, okay, let's start going closer for profitability and really focusing on our clients and scaling it out. So in about, what was it, I think like October 2016, we were raising our Series A. We actually had no intention to get acquired. We started reaching out to a few venture capital firms that had invested in event technology companies. And because of that, within like 1 week, we had the top 4 companies in our space reach out to us and say, basically, we want to acquire your company. At that time, I was looking at different markets, and I said, well, okay, the event market, it's not the biggest market, so valuations aren't going to be as high. However, our technology can be used for retail. So I started reaching out to Walmart. And it can be used for manufacturing. So I reached out to General Electric. And I said it could be used for theme parks. So I reached out to Six Flags. All of them were super interested. But what they said was, OK, in order basically to validate your product, you're going to basically need to do a proof of concept with us. And that pilot program to build and to launch within an organization is probably going to be a year. And then after that, we can basically determine if it's a good fit or not. To me, that was a pivot. And we talked to our investors, pretty much like starting over. And we also want to be focused. So we said, what's our mission? And our mission was really to bring the right people together, to connect them, and to build high-quality relationships. We said, are we going to do that through retail? No way. We're going to do that through theme parks? Possibly. Manufacturing? Probably not. And the people who use our technology for manufacturing plants, they're probably not going to like the fact they're being tracked everywhere, and that's showing how long they're working at a machine. So we looked at all these different companies, and at the time, the company was called eTouches. But eTouches was really focused on the power of human connection. Every other event technology company that we had talked to, it was all about, okay, how do we sell more tickets? How do we convert more attendees? How do we drive more business leads to our exhibitors? And for myself, I said, that really wasn't exciting. It wasn't really following our mission. So we ended up getting acquired by Venturi. I'm still at Venturi, but for the first year, I was essentially our head of product. So I worked on all of our mobile and data products. They'd acquired a few other companies, and I became like a mini CEO of all of them and started integrating them together. And then a year after, I got promoted to their executive team. And at the time, eTouches, they were only around 80 people. Now the company is around 500. And we ended up going through a whole entire rebrand. So I got to work with them and take their message of power of human connections and create this new name, which means Avenue plus Event plus Entry, which really ties into what we were trying to do. And then from there, we started buying out other companies, scaling them. And currently, I'm the VP of Innovation. So my job now is I'm basically head of product for all of our future products. I have a lab of basically 10 engineers that build out technology for me. And I still design all of it, because that's what I love to do. And then I also run all of our technology partnerships. So anyone wants to integrate into our platform that basically pushes it forward, I do that as well. And then lastly, I run all of our product marketing. So really everything messaging-wise, branding, that goes out there. So that was kind of the quick story, or not so quick, however, quick for 4 years. And now I kind of want to talk more about my book. So like I said, when I was 18, 19, I didn't know what to do. I'd have a lot of these difficult situations, such as, should I be a horizontal platform? Should I focus on a vertical? What kind of companies should I go after? How should I do that? Should I hire people? Should I invest in Facebook ads? And the only way I could find out what to do was I'd reach out to other people in San Francisco, which is an amazing reason that if you're here, you can talk to some of the most brightest people and amazing minds. So my first thing was I didn't really know how to design and manufacture a product. So I started reaching out to all the top designers. And there's this one guy, Robert Bruner, who he found Johnny Ive for Apple. And he then started his own design firm called Ammunition, where they designed Beats by Dr. Dre. And he said, you know what, I don't have time to mentor you. However, there's this other guy, Bill Webb, and he's a design firm called Huge. And they made the Nike Fuel Band. So we were doing a wristband at the time. And I'm like, this is amazing. I can talk to the guy. He can show me all the concepts. He also did the GoPro. And I hit it off with him. And Bill gave me a lot of advice. Every single week, I'd go to Potrero Hill. I'd sit down with him. I'd show him my designs. He'd give me homework of basically what to do. And it was almost like an internship for like 3 to 4 months. So I took that model, and from all of our investors and advisors and friends that I met who had companies that were far ahead of me by 6 months, years, decades, I collected all the information. And it was really for myself. It wasn't organized at all. So after selling the company for about a year, what I did was I took every single Google Doc I had, every single email, every single note, and I started consolidating it into like a master database. I then ran it through basically Amazon for SageMaker, which is one of their AI tools. It can automatically tag and segment all of your advice. You pretty much have to tag all of your content before you can run it in their AI machine. So I did that just basically to categorize everything. And then from there, I found basically there was about 350 different pieces of advice that I'd used. And I picked the top 50. And for myself, really, just as like closure, because I'm like, I don't want to forget, and let's say in 5 years now, someone's like, hey, what did you do in 2012 to 2017? I don't want to be like, I don't know, I did this company, it was kind of like a blur. I wanted to make sure that every single piece of advice, all the golden nuggets, I remembered it, and I had this chapter of my life that I could share with others. So the 50 rules is broken into 8 different chapters, from marketing to fundraising to design. There's different stories, there's different actual pieces of advice, so you basically know what to do, step 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I've been reading a lot of business books like The Lean Startup and Rework, and a lot of them are really good, but they were kind of high level. And a lot of them were other people's examples, so I wanted to basically share my firsthand experience. In the book, it launched about a month ago. We did a launch event about 2 to 3 weeks ago. It got #1 on Amazon for about a week for business books. So if you guys do like the book, not trying to basically put a plug in too much for my book, but if you do actually enjoy the content, definitely leave a review, because that will basically help the algorithm push the book higher up on Amazon. But for today, what I wanted to share was essentially the top 5 rules that, in short stories, that really helped me out, that I think might relate to everyone in this room. So the first rule is from the sales chapter, and this really goes back to what I believe in community, and it's all about building sales through community. So what do I mean by that? At first, when I started, I was in the basement here working every single day. I wasn't really leaving the basement, and I was also the biz guy and sales guy, marketing guy. And I believed in technology to essentially get all of our business. So I'd basically download lists, I'd create lookalike audiences, I would target online, I'd put ad spend. However, our product wasn't a consumer product. So that model didn't really work. So I had to start getting out there. And I didn't really know how to connect with people in the right way. They always thought I was trying to sell them on something. So I created kind of this methodology. At least for myself, it's based off some other practices called the 3 cups of tea. And the 3 cups of tea is essentially, it's a series of 3 meetings where it starts, the first meeting is 80% personal, 20% professional. So you basically try to create a bond, a connection with the individual. The next meeting is 50% personal, professional. If you get to the second meeting, they probably care for you and understand what your intention is and what your mission and passion in life is. So they're going to really listen to that 50% a lot more. And then if you get to the third meeting, it's essentially 80% business, 20% personal. And then from there, you can basically determine how the relationship works. But it was really important that the first step was really personal, so you can understand, are these people that I want to work with? It's not that I'm selling you something, it's that it's a partnership, that we're basically growing and furthering a mission together. So one of my father's friends founded a company up in Seattle called Alta Vista, and they were bought by this company called Lexmark. But when you go into like a Best Buy or a Walmart and you have the signage that promotes all the products, they manufacture all those and design them for all the stores. So it's kind of a random business, but I said, like, okay, how are you some guy in a suburb of Seattle making signage for all these stores across the world? And what he told me was that he had this secret lounge. So I said, okay, what do you mean? And he called it the lair of Alta Vista. And he brought me in, and in this lounge they had a movie theater, they had a pool table, they had a ping pong table, and before really closing any big deals, he'd bring all of his clients in, they'd get to know each other, they'd share stories, and they'd really care for one another. So what we did was we said, okay, right now we were in a co-working space in San Francisco. You'd walk in, other people were listening to your ideas. Sometimes they'd take them. There wasn't really a sense of community and brand. So we said, we're going to get our own office. However, finding an office was really challenging in San Francisco. So we found this house, which it was actually owned by this guy who used to do all the music production for the iPhone ringtones. And it was like really random, but I thought it was kind of this cool history. And he was playing me all the different ringtones that he made, which I hear almost 100 times a day in people's iPhones and other models. So we ended up moving in. We put a ping pong table there. We put a little basketball hoop. We're close to AT&T Park, so if you guys haven't been, AT&T Park for all the Giants baseball games, it's like $10 for a ticket. So you can even go over for a few innings and have some food, have a drink. So we'd start bringing all of our clients and partners and investors to play ping pong, to talk about our problems, to basically go to a baseball game. And that was really important for forming this community, which it was a lot more than just our product. And the reason that this really struck with me was, so during college, I worked for Red Bull. And at Red Bull, I was a student brand manager, but it was all about their community. So when we first started joining or onboarding to Red Bull, they had this brand guide, and they had this, I believe his name was Joey, and it had all these different attributes. So, well, Joey, he's adventurous, he's gregarious, he's an extrovert, he's really intelligent, however, he got bored in high school and dropped out and started to travel the world. And they're like, if Red Bull was a person, that's who it would be. So for us, we said, okay, we need a person who is looped, and we basically need to show who that person is rather than just talking about it. And then at Red Bull, they'd also say, okay, when was the first time you had a Red Bull? And for most people, it wasn't, I went into a 7-Eleven, I went into, let's say, a Wawa, which we have in the East Coast, and I bought it out of a refrigerator. It was usually, I was at this event where they were making flying machines off aircraft carriers, or I saw it on TV because this guy was basically skydiving out of space. It was all about these experiences, which was more about their lifestyle and their community. So we really embraced that, and I challenge everyone here for the projects you're working on, even your life, focus on the community. So if you're really solving a problem for someone, focus on the empathy, the emotions that drive that as well. And this picture on the left, so my co-founder Sambhav, he got married when he was 27. This is a few years ago, and we ended up going to India. So it was an amazing time. If no one's been to an Indian wedding, try to get invited. They're fantastic. Yeah, we went to Delhi and Hyderabad. And actually, Delhi, it's a story for another time. So the next rule I want to go over is really about operations. And this is a picture, back in the day in 2013, right as DU is ending with Tim. And this is about embracing serendipity. There's going to be ups and downs, which you're not going to expect, and you just have to deal with it, like really in a positive manner. So in the last story, I kind of shared how we got this office space. We were super excited. So we only had that office space for 3 months. The reason we had it for 3 months was it was a pretty big building. It was 3 stories, and we were renting the whole thing. We're a small startup. We got a decent deal, but still insanely expensive compared to other cities. And I said, okay, I want to find my other friends who have startups to take over the other floors. Almost like a mini incubator. We'd have like 3 to 4 companies. So we ended up getting one of my friends, robotics companies. He moved in, and I'm like, okay, this is getting good. And then there was still a bottom floor which had like a music studio, and I said, I want to fill out this space. So I invited one of my friends to come, and his CTO then wanted to double check to see that the zoning was correct for the building. So he reached out to the city of San Francisco and said, just want to make sure that we can actually work here because it looks like a residential building. I'm not sure if you guys watched Silicon Valley, but on Silicon Valley at the time, almost like exactly, there was an episode where basically Erlich Bachman's incubator in his house, the next door neighbor was upset because they were using all the power for all their servers. And he said, I'm going to report you. And if I report you, since it's basically a residential building, it's not zoned for office space, they're going to kick you out. So for us, that happened. They reached out to us, and they said, hey, you can't work there. However, I found kind of this loophole in the system where you could actually do light manufacturing in SoMa in San Francisco. They were trying to drive more physical products and fashion companies to that region. So I called all of my friends and contractors that had been helping me out and said, okay, we basically need to make a machine shop in my office. So within a week, we had CNC machines, 3D printers. We had a lot of other heavy machinery, and we filled it in. And then we said, okay, we're ready for the inspection. So the inspector came in. He walked into the building. He said, wow, it's definitely light manufacturing. However, this building also isn't zoned for light manufacturing, so I'm sorry. You guys have to move out. And they gave us a week. So that's just a story where you might be focusing on other things. For us, like the office was a huge distraction. However, it created a sense of community. And from there, it was really good for showing our team, okay, how do we deal with stressful situations? How do we make the most of it? And how do we also ensure that we're using it as an opportunity to move forward? So from there, we got a really cool office in a building that was shared with Pinterest. And just by being there, we started meeting a lot of these other corporate clients outside our office, where other offices before was kind of hidden. So I believe really in serendipity, stuff happens for a reason, and you need to embrace it. This is Alan on the left, my co-founder. He's not a toxic employee. Everyone who sees this slide, they're like, so that's an example of a toxic employee. This is an example of a non-toxic employee, of what you are looking for. But yeah, this was our first product, basically the necklace in the mobile app where all the contacts would show up. And while kind of scaling our team, I was really big on branding. So we went through this big brand exercise with one of our investors, he runs a branding agency in Boston. And they do a lot of cool companies such as like Bird Snowboards and Nike and Under Armour. And for us, we wanted to be more than a tech company. We really wanted this lifestyle. So with them, we created all these different attributes, such as we wanted to make sure people were clear, they were transparent, they were innovative. And we had these words on our walls. However, just having words up there, that's not going to instill that culture. So we decided for the first 10 people we were going to hire, they had to basically fit that culture. By interviewing them, we need to make sure they were transparent, they were innovative thinkers, they were motivated to come to the office every single day to basically further our mission. And we thought, okay, for these first 10 people, if they have this culture, then the people they hire, they're going to use the same practice, and we'll really have this great culture scaling out. For the first 10 people, it wasn't as easy as I expected. First of all, like I said earlier, it's really expensive to hire people. It's really hard to figure out people are about to leave their job. And a lot of people that we hired were on LinkedIn looking for a job. So there was something that we're going to find out about eventually of, why were they basically out in the market? Why weren't they picked up or poached immediately from another company by an HR or a talent hunting firm? And there was 3 employees that we came across. So the first was a no-show employee. They fit the culture. They seemed great. However, they were sick, twice a week. And then someone in their family was sick. And then they basically, once again, weren't feeling good. And then they just didn't show up. And they were doing their work, but then they started not delivering their work either. And then we said, okay, where is it? They basically went MIA. So make sure that when you hire people at the beginning, you got to put a lot of smart hours in. It's not about how many hours you're doing it the right way. You need people to basically show up, and they're also motivated. The second person is the know-it-all employee. So we hired this one employee. Guy was really smart. He was a VP of innovation at BlackBerry during the early days when they were scaling out. Was there for about 10 years. And he also went to MIT and Harvard. However, he acted like he knew more than all of our employees and also our clients. So he was our only customer-facing operations manager. And it's basically his job when we get a client, he'd onboard them to our technology. He would then walk them through on-site how to deploy the technology. And then afterwards, he'd debrief with them. And all of our customers started getting offended because they said they felt stupid talking to this employee. So with him, I basically talked to him, and he was also, when it came to me, he says, I know more than you. So with myself, I'm always trying to surround myself, like I said, and basically learn as much as possible. Make sure that when you're hiring someone, if they are a know-it-all employee, that can be okay, but they need to kind of understand their boundaries. And maybe that person shouldn't be someone that's client-facing. And then really, the last person that I want to go over is really the person that doesn't take ownership. So I call them the blame game employee. There was a lot of great employees that we had who got great work done. However, when they missed a deadline or something went wrong, they would basically point fingers. And I think it's all about ownership. I think it's about basically, if you do something, it's no one else's fault. We went through this training at my company. We had a Navy SEAL come in. And he works with Jocko Willink. Jocko basically has a podcast about like ownership and about how you work together as teams. And him and Jocko basically, the things that they did together, which they shared with us, was let's say someone on his team wasn't ready. If they were on a mission and they weren't in the right position or didn't have the right equipment, he would say, as the platoon leader, it was my fault. So they basically, and then he'd say, it's my fault. I didn't basically train you right, or I didn't get you to the right position. And that person said, you know what? I'm not going to blame you. It was my fault. I should have owned it. So you want people on your team that take complete ownership. And then actually, I designed these shoes that say own it on it. And I try to kind of remember and remind everyone on my team that never point fingers, that basically own it and say, here's what I can do next time to fix that situation. Next is actually kind of the beginning of my book. So if you guys have started to read it, this is from the business growth section. This is Greg. He was also kind of one of my design mentors. He was head of design at Solar Republic, and before that, he also worked in Beats by Dr. Dre. And with Greg, I learned a lot about design and a lot about marketing. And at the beginning, when I didn't really have a lot of funding, I wanted to make sure that I could get into these companies. I did that through advisors. So I met this one guy who was head of acquisitions at LinkedIn, and I thought, okay, perfect. If I can get him as an advisor, we'll get really tight with LinkedIn. Potentially, they can acquire technology after like a year or two. He ended up wanting a lot of equity, which I said was fine at the beginning. However, I tried to make a way where at certain milestones that equity would be vested for them, and it would be released. And it was really a disaster, because it wasn't concrete. If you did X, Y, Z, you would get this kind of equity. And I then decided, actually, I didn't want to give advisors equity at all. I said, I want basically investor advisors. I want investors that are really active who can advise for our company. However, I did have 2 advisors that from the beginning, I did give equity to. And one of them, they met with us all the time. I thought basically they had the same interests as us in mind. And then after about 8 months, I found out that they were trying to take our technology and fit it into one of their patents. And they essentially would say that we'd be a co-inventor. However, after looking really into it, they would really own all of our technology. And it would increase the valuation of their IP that they could license out to all these other companies. There was another advisor who he was also very active, and he would help us with introductions. And after any introduction would happen or a financing round, he would say, actually, I'm not an advisor, I'm an employee. You owe me basically back pay for all these years. And it got really complicated. So I would just make sure that when you're screening advisors, advisors are really important to have. Just ask yourself, is it the right strategic move for my company? And if so, if I do give equity, how am I going to do it? How am I going to make sure that it's given in the right way? And also, how do I secure the fact that maybe 3, 6, 9, 12 months after, that their interest isn't going to change, and that they're using our company basically as a way to get to their next step rather than work together. And the last goal. So for this last takeaway, this is tying corporate culture, but this is a picture of me, I think in like 2011 or 2012 kiteboarding. I love kiteboarding, and it's a great way to basically create a community, especially around the world and here in San Francisco. So when I was living here across the street at DU, there's a kiteboard beach called 3rd Ave down the street. It's in Foster City, and I basically ride my bike and go kiting a few times a week. And from that, I met like Larry Page and Sergey Brin from Google. They kiteboard out there. There's a lot of other VCs that kiteboard, and no one really says what they do, so you have no idea who you're talking to. And you basically form this connection, once again, off a personal bond, and then you find out who these people are, and they care for you. So there was a point about 2 years in where Sambhav and Alan and myself, we were kind of getting burnt out. Our company was doing fine, but we weren't really scaling fast enough. And we're thinking maybe we should pivot to a consumer model. Should we basically hire some more enterprise sales guys to close these big $1 million deals per year? And it really wasn't getting us excited. So we decided that we're going to basically trade a day in the office for a day at the beach. And went up to Marin Valley, basically to the beach, and we sat down, we started asking ourselves, okay, what are our personal goals? What are our professional goals? What kind of people do we want to surround ourselves with? What's our mission? Why are we doing this? Is it basically to change the world? Is it lifestyle? Is it for the money? Is it for the fame? And we decided that we really wanted to connect the right people around the world. We wanted to create this global community. And kind of through that mission, we got motivated once again. And the reason I think this is really important, and I've actually applied it to my life a lot, is that at Stanford, they have this class called Designing Your Life. I'm not sure if that's the exact name, but it became so popular, they actually created a book called Design Your Life. And after this, we ended up buying the book. We all went through it, and it asks you, okay, what are your personal goals in life? What are your professional goals in life? And then as you go throughout your day, you fill in your energy for each activity. How do I feel? Basically good to bad, so 10 to 1. And then you can identify after a few months, okay, here are all the activities that basically slow me down that I don't enjoy, that maybe aren't my core competencies. And here are the activities that maybe I enjoy, but they're not syncing my professional and my personal goals together. So for us, from that, we're also able to kind of validate our personal and professional goals. And usually when companies get acquired, the founders leave. And you'll basically help them transition to technology. However, for us, we all stayed, really, for a long time. And the reason was because we all believed in this mission. And eTouches, now Venture, who ended up acquiring our company, they also believed in what we were trying to do. And we'd go back and look at that piece of paper. I still have it in a Dropbox. I look at it all the time. And whenever I'm trying to ask myself, okay, what's next in life? Or what's next for this company? Or what's next for me personally? I look at that and make sure, okay, like, am I making a rash decision? Am I making the right decision? Is this something that maybe I got excited from meeting someone last night or the day before, and now basically I'm going to go in this direction? And now if I did that, maybe 2 weeks later, I say, wait, what am I doing? That's not actually following my plan. So I'd recommend for everyone, definitely, take a step back and, even every morning, like, journal for 5 minutes. Say, okay, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? Ask yourself, okay, what do you love to do? What do you want to do? What are you doing right now? It's maybe taking up time for the stuff that you really enjoy. And for myself, one of the reasons that we ended up really going into the event space and for this technology, beyond the fact it was physical and software technology, was that I love traveling the world and that I love connecting with people. So this really fit my personal goals. And for myself now, I love adventures. I love snowboarding. I still love travel. And for myself, at least as I go forward and for future startups, I'll make sure that what I do kind of fits into what I love. And then I'll be motivated to kind of go every single day, and it's going to be fun along the way. So those are the top 5 takeaways from the book. Everyone does have it. However, this QR code, I have some stickers that I think actually, I don't have any on me now, but I'll mail them in. And it'd be awesome if you guys basically stick them around. If people basically scan that, then they can buy it on Amazon. If you have any questions about the book, I'll share my contact info, and you can reach out to me. In addition, I'm actually launching a series of courses. So I've had a lot of friends that have read the book, and they said, hey, it's still too high level. And they basically want like templates and guides that I used. So I'm launching my first course, which is a business growth course. And it has all my different templates with all the different formulas in the Excel. And I have all these different PDF guides that are interactive that you can fill in, such as how do I basically identify the right market? How do I do my TAM, SAM, and SOM? How do I identify the right use cases? What kind of questions do I basically ask a customer and user persona? So really kind of going throughout the product marketing and product management aspect of your company to validate your product market fit. And then I have a guide, which will be next, which is about how to scale your startup. So it kind of has actionable steps for different kind of social media advertisement, different hacks that I found, and then also here's how to spend, here's the kind of content you can do. I share everything that I made so you can kind of see it next to each other. So once again, thank you for having me out here. I haven't been here for a year. It's been great to talk to everyone, so thank you. Yeah.
So I have a question about the advisors.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you don't have any traction or like get people, how much, how like something you give them, and how can I think about that? I don't know how much to give because I don't see anything that I'd rather do.
Yeah. So for myself, and this is just my opinion, I wouldn't give equity to advisors unless they were an investor. However, I've had friends who have, and I know Paul Graham from like Y Combinator, he has like a blog post about how to calculate equity for advisors. And a lot of times it'll go anywhere from like 0.25% all the way up to 3%. And where I've seen 3% is, let's say you have a company and a celebrity becomes your co-founder, and they say, and then like, for example, Will.i.am is the co-founder of XYZ. In that point, you'd give like more equity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I only wanted basically 10 investors. And I had basically each investor fit a different part of our company. So I wanted someone who could help us in sales, someone help us in marketing, manufacturing. And I basically let them know, hey, by investing in our company, we're going to be very active. I need your help in this. And kind of the same exact thing, I went back and said, okay, personally, what are you trying to do? And for us, at least, we were doing like really cutting edge stuff in Bluetooth. And like our manufacturing contact liked that a lot. For sales, we were trying all these different sales technologies. So like our sales investor liked that a lot. So I would just say, basically, when you're getting investors, and let's say you don't even have traction at the beginning, right? Either it's about your team, or it's about your idea, or it's by the fact that you went out into the market and you asked a lot of potential customers, and they said, yeah, I would definitely buy this. And then those investors can help you take that business to the next level.
I have a question about form a team, because you talk about like people, their personalities. And I want to ask, how long does it take for you to decide either these people will be your co-founder or partner or collaborator, and how you decided what kind of relationship or position that they're going to have?
Yeah, so for me, it kind of all fell together. I met Alan and Sambhav. We only knew each other for the duration of DU. However, Alan was really pessimistic. Sambhav was very optimistic, and I was kind of in between, so it kind of helped balance out. And then also, since we basically said we're going to do this for 3 months, we just kind of went with it. However, if you're looking for co-founders, what I've seen in the past, I've seen friends start companies who've known each other for a few years, who kind of know each other. If it's someone that's new, who might be, let's say, more experienced in a certain area, and your skills don't overlap, I think that's also good. So I'd say if it's someone that you don't know for as long, let's say a few months, you want to say, okay, you're going to do these different skills. I'm going to do these. And you got to trust that I'm going to own this. Because I've seen a lot of times where we have basically co-founders only know each other for a few months or maybe even like a year or two. And they start having a lot of overlap. And like if you look at Allbirds, for example, the shoe company, they have 2 co-CEOs. And they do a lot of the same stuff. And they talk about how they had a lot of friction because there was a design guy and then kind of like a business environmentalist guy. And a lot of what they were doing, at the beginning they said, okay, we're co-CEOs, we were doing this. And then the CEO job brought it back into doing the same thing, and they would argue over what to do. And they said, okay, now we really need to separate our responsibilities. So I would say if you do have friends that you trust and you kind of know that they're a good skill set that fits what you potentially don't have, I'd go for that. If it's a co-founder that you've only known, let's say, for a few months, or let's say you meet them at like a hackathon or a start meetup, definitely go hang out with them and their friends, get to learn more about them, understand what their skills are, and then make sure that you have really a clear separation of what you're going to do.
Yeah, here. Yeah, I have 2 questions. You talked about the toxic employees. So how can everyone can know about who want to hire before they start the job? It seems like you give an example for someone who have good CV, but shows like some other. How I can figure out these things before they start the job? And the second thing, is it possible to have 2 advisors at the same time?
Yeah, so I mean, it's challenging, like hiring someone, because right, they may have a good CV, they may be a really good first impression, and then over time, as they get more comfortable, like the truth of their personality really comes out. So for myself, I would try to basically make sure we didn't hire someone at first. We'd hire them as a contractor, and they would work for us for a month or 2. And then if we thought it was a good fit, then they would join our team. There's also, I just met this company founder last night, which it seems perfect. I wish I had it when I was first building my team out, but it's called Scoutable. And what it is a video game that basically candidates can play, and it looks at their facial expressions. And from their social media background and their facial expressions, it can say if they're a good culture fit and also a good skill fit. So there's tech like that that you can use. And then for advisors, yeah, I'd say you can definitely have several advisors. Once again, you just need to ask yourself, it's all about building your business, right? So what do I need help on in my business? If there's something, let's say, connections to retailers, or you've never done marketing before and you have a really good product background, and there's someone, let's say, who is head of marketing at HubSpot. They have some extra time. They say, I'll help you out, because they know what to do with like very detailed steps. I would say that's fine, but I wouldn't get advisors just for the sake of saying on your deck I have these advisors. I'd make sure that, okay, it's almost like a job to be done. I need this job to be done, and this person can help me do it.
Hey, can I go next? So you said you met your co-founders, and then you got funding for the first 3 months, but it sounds easy. How do you think or why do you think you got the funding right after, without even a product, and just sounds like just an idea?
I definitely believe in a combination of kind of luck and being in the right place at the right time, but I know, like, at least for Tim, he'd been going to a lot of events, and he'd meet a lot of people, and it was just kind of hard, the context of taking all these business cards in, just the time of kind of uploading it. So I think it was a pain that was really relevant at the time. It's one of those things saying, okay, if we could basically solve this for myself, there's thousands of other people out there that have the same problem. For myself, I wouldn't say necessarily it was easy, because I kind of look back at it and I'm saying, okay, if I didn't have my snowboard coach tell me to make stuff, I wouldn't have started engineering. I wouldn't have then gone to basically my school and started my club. I wouldn't have met my basically friend's father recommended me to come out here. So that was kind of all by coincidence, but in like a series of events. But I'd say if you essentially know where you want to be, then you can start taking more actions to help you get into an environment like this.
Hey, Brian. I'm Brandon. I'm from Austin, Texas. I might have met you at South by a few years ago. I'm also launching at South by next year. This one's 6 months. Question is, I am trying to figure out a synergy between Austin and the Bay Area. In your experience with those investors or those advisors or mentors, where do you see like an advantage of being offsite, like where engineers are, more reasonable versus here? And I'm just wondering if I should, bring everything here or split the time.
Yeah, so there's actually a company that was in Boost VC that was first based here. It's called Favor. It was like a food delivery startup. And there was a lot of companies doing that here, such as like Uber Eats and Seamless. So they ended up moving to Austin and basically take over that market because no one else was focusing on it. And I know a lot of their investors were a combination of San Francisco and Austin. And at least for myself, we spent a ton of money being in San Francisco. If I did it again, I'd probably be somewhere like Salt Lake City or even somewhere like in Pennsylvania where it's more affordable. And I could fly out like every 2 weeks to see those investors.
And better mountains.
And better mountains, yeah. I mean, I'd have to basically wake up at 4 a.m. to get to Tahoe. If I didn't, it would be like a 7-hour drive. So I'd say for Austin, you gotta, if you do want to have your company in both spots, you have to ask yourself, okay, where are my customers going to be? So if most of your customers are going to be in Austin, I'd say it's a great place to be. If it's more of like a virtual product, right, where you have investors in both places, just make sure your investors, they want to have control and make sure that you're giving them the right status updates. So every 2 weeks, I would create an email for each investor saying, hey, in the area that basically your sales or marketing, here are all the things that I've done and here's what's next. And I think if you can do that in this day and age, like probably for my next phase of life, I'm going to be like nomadic for like a year or two. And I have friends that have built companies like that. So I'd say it doesn't change it at all, the fact that you're based in Austin or San Francisco. You just need to make sure that you set expectations and you have the right communication. And if you're in Austin, it's a huge advantage because that's a different market that a lot of San Francisco companies aren't focusing on.
Thanks.
Hey there, right here in the middle, up front. Hey, I'm Alec from LA, and thank you for that speech about 3 cups of tea. Questions on the hiring part, a little bit fun, right? So when you're going past 10 hires and you start to continue your interviewing process to onboard new employees, what are some of the fun questions that you tend to always ask?
That's a good question. Okay, so yeah, like I kind of do the same methodology when I start off. So I usually ask, hey, like, what are your personal like interests and passions? I usually ask them, like, what's one of the craziest things you've ever done? I also ask them, basically, how do you look at fear? So for myself, I look at fear as false expectations appearing real. So kind of through that, then I asked, okay, well, how do you overcome that fear? And then once I understand, okay, here's how someone basically deals with like difficult situations. Here's what someone likes to do outside of work. Here's basically how it ties into my company. Then I can start asking more like technical questions that's related to the role. And like it's like at Eventury, I hired a lot of people, and we scaled from like 80 to 500. And as we were scaling, a lot of it was done more through like technology rather than asking those personal questions. So whenever I meet anyone, even before like talking about business, it's always like, hey, what do you love to do? And even for myself, I like flow state. It's one of the reasons why I like all these different action sports. And flow state's all about pushing yourself slightly outside your comfort zone, so that becomes your comfort zone that you can keep pushing it. So I like to identify, okay, how do people push themselves outside their comfort zone? If so, how do they handle it? And then how do they move forward? So several questions, but yeah. Go for it, yeah. Or, yeah.
Hi, Brian. I'm Rio. I'm also come from Taiwan, and it's nice to know that you also have a partner over there. So my question is, you said that you have a team in Taiwan, and what kind of challenges or difficulties that you've been dealing with in that process that they had so far away from here?
Yeah, so like the time zones are the complete opposite, right? Pretty much between East Coast, US, where I'm based, and then in Taiwan. So it's really important that at first we didn't really follow a Scrum methodology at all. And we would do maybe Scrum like once to twice a week. And there was miscommunication, at least at product build out. So I was very focused on really as like a product manager, okay, here's the design, here are the features, here are the APIs you're going to use, here's the technology, here's how long it should take. And I'd basically give it to my team. They'd build out tech specs. They'd say, we think it's going to take, let's say, 2 weeks. We'd agree on it, and then they'd start building it out. At the beginning, I thought that was fine. It would be delivered in 2 weeks, and a lot of times it would take 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. So we started implementing, we actually made someone on our team a Scrum Master, where every single morning, their nighttime, we'd have this review. It says, go around the room. Okay, what did you do today? What are you doing tomorrow? What are your blockers? And we created on Jira a Scrum board where we basically show everything that's blocking. And I actually, usually Scrum's only for like development and engineering. I applied Scrum to our entire business because we were also doing sales and marketing in Taiwan for like that market. So we'd go around the entire team, and then every 2 weeks, we'd go through and we'd figure out, okay, here were all the blockers. We then reset our goals in the next 2 weeks. And the goal was that every 2 weeks we would launch not just a product, but we'd launch a new like marketing campaign. Our Scrum Master started getting lazy and thought everything would go on autopilot. And when they stopped doing those meetings, even though to a lot of people they thought they were boring and monotonous, the process definitely fell apart. And then we put Scrum back in and started working. So I would just say if you're doing remote working, for that, it's really important that you talk daily. And also I'd say, so as they're waking up, you could say we're basically going to bed. So I always thought of it, they're a day ahead, which is like a huge advantage. So I'd basically work all day, and then I'd say, hey, okay, can you basically continue this? And then when I wake up in the morning, it's finished. So almost like passing the baton back and forth.
Sorry, just last question. So in terms of organization, is that are there a completely new company over there, or is it kind of branch of your company in Asia?
Yeah, it's a branch office.
It's a branch office.
Yeah.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Last two questions.
Okay.
First one, last one.
Hi, my name is Asma. Thanks for sharing your valuable experience. My question is, what are the factories and websites you advise me or us to deal with in manufacturing our prototype?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, at first we were talking to like big companies like PCH International, which does a lot of manufacturing overseas in China. And then there was also a company, Dragon Innovation, that was bought up by Avnet. And they're in Boston, and they basically helped Pebble scale their manufacturing when they raised all their money in Kickstarter. So we thought working with those kind of companies would make the most sense. However, it was challenging. We'd have to basically go overseas, and a lot of times we'd put in specs for material, And since someone wasn't sleeping there and managing it, it would come back different. So we actually focused on making all of our hardware at first in Golden, Colorado. So all of our PCB design was all done there. And then all of our injection molding was actually done by a company in the South Bay. So we started focusing on doing, really, for our first 10,000 units, everything local as much as possible, so that we could go into the manufacturing plant, talk to them, we could iterate. Then from there, we ended up getting investment from a big manufacturing company in Taiwan. And it's called Quanta. And basically with Quanta, they were manufacturing like really, really big products. So like the guys working on our team, we basically held them up on, they were working on the Apple Watch that was coming out. And they're saying, what are we doing? Basically doing like 50,000 units for this really small company from San Francisco. So they had a really high quality manufacturing process. However, we weren't a priority. So I'd recommend that if you are going to do manufacturing, I'd start making your prototypes here in the US if possible, unless you want to move to Shenzhen for maybe a few months and make it there. And then from there, I'd have a team member stay in Shenzhen or somewhere else in China or Vietnam now and basically help scale out the product. If you don't want to do that, then I'd focus regionally here in the US.
Thank you.
Can I? Yeah, thank you. Okay. Hi, thank you for the talk. I find the 3 cups of tea idea is very interesting, but the first stage, like 80% personal and 20% professional, I kind of find it hard to keep the talk like still on the professional frame. So how did you manage to do that? Like how to keep the talk with no too personal chatting, you know? So.
Yeah, so if you reach out to someone, right, and you say, hey, I want to talk about my business, and then you show up and you say, I don't want to talk about my business, I just want to keep it personal, they're going to be very confused, right? Yeah. So a lot of basically what I would do is I'd reach out to people and say, hey, I'm really interested in design. I'd love to basically take you out for a coffee and talk about my interest for design, and then it would basically wouldn't even be about my company at all. And then I'd tie my company at the end. Or I'd meet someone at a networking event, and I have a friend who basically has events where you're not allowed to talk about business at all. And that kind of helped train me, where I just basically go up to someone and once again I'd say, hey, like, what do you love to do? And they'd say, you know, hey, I like kiteboarding or hiking, or I like painting. And just making sure that first touch point is focused on really not business, but almost identifying. So I would recommend doing some like background research on the people you want to reach out to and figure out what their interest is, and then connecting over that. And then you can go into the next steps.
Thank you.
Last one.
Hello. Hi, Brian. My name is Shreyas. I came from London. I would like to know what patent you have on Loop D. And secondly, who's your competition at the moment?
What was the second question?
Who's your competitions or competitors in the market?
Yeah, so we have, I think it's like basically 2 patents. There's a lot that are like added into each other's continuation. So the first one is the wristband. So basically when you shake, so any wristband device that uses an accelerometer motion and matches handshakes and then basically exchanges over Bluetooth, that's one patent. So actually, yeah, Apple came out with a patent after us. And it was kind of interesting, like we've still been kind of watching it. It was basically doing exchange contact info on the Apple Watch. It's almost like I think like they almost looked at our patent. There's like a lot of the similar like language use. So that's one of them. The other one is a mesh network using Bluetooth and LiDAR and other wireless frequencies, where essentially if you had all these different devices within a physical building, if you had, let's say, a gateway in that side of the room, which is connected, let's say, satellite, 4G, or Wi-Fi, and the range of one device is only 20 feet, you could essentially share and hop data between each other to get it to that gateway. So those were the 2 main. And then for competitors, at first when we were like, hey, we're more of a technology company, it was the beacon companies. So you have like Estimote, Contact, Radius, and then we started becoming more of this verticalized event company, Double Dutch. Here you have Certain, Attendify, Guidebook. Those were mobile apps. And now our big competitors, a company called Cvent. They're a big company. They were public. Splash That, Bizibo. So those are the main companies that now we compete against.
Okay, thank you.